Fact or fiction? The Miami Hurricanes are now being heavily linked to the Big Ten.
You are Locked On ACC, your daily podcast on the Atlantic Coast Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Shout out to the everydayers, and thank you so much for making Locked On ACC your first listen. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. He is Kenton Gibbs, former NC State defensive lineman and co-host of Locked On Wolfpack. I am Alex Donno, host of Locked On Canes, and today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create your account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Thankfully, this is not an ACC quarterback, although there was at least one ACC team interested when he transferred, but there is a betting scandal involving a starting quarterback in major college football. Boston College now has their starting quarterback, so that's one fewer quarterback competition going on in the ACC right now. But Kenton, I want to start with this because I was checking out Locked On Big Ten the other day, and Craig Sheeman is a beast. He does an awesome job hosting that show, but he got my attention when the title of the episode was Miami begging to join the Big Ten. First of all, I'm not saying it's not happening because, I cover Miami very closely, Kenton, but I'm also not having conversations with decision makers like the university president or the athletic director, people who would be involved in big picture stuff like that. I'm usually in the weeds when it comes to talking with players, staff members, football stuff, but I'll say it on the record. I personally haven't heard anything coming from inside the program about Miami begging to join any conference right now. But I will say they're going to leave the ACC. I think the Big Ten could be a good fit. We'll talk about it.
I'm not upset at Big Ten, a potential good fit for Miami. I'm not upset at Miami potentially having talks to join the Big Ten. Begging? Begging. So they're on their hands and knees groveling. Please, Big Ten, please, won't you shake a poor sinner's hand and help us out of this destitute situation that we are in? If anything, Miami is one of the few schools with leverage in multiple places. Like I have talked about so often with some of these other schools, it is not about what you think you're worth. It is about what the market will pay you. Miami has a market to say, we can have a bidding war and say, who's going to pay us more? What you going to do? What you going to do for it? You got to make something shake to get me, baby. I ain't coming cheap. I'm not just, going to join you just to join you. Miami has the leverage to do that because they are a blue blood. They are located centrally in terms of a talent hotbed, in terms of South Florida. I mean, how many NFL players do you got through there? Like Kendrick said, how many stocks you really got? It's too many options. It's too many NFL players coming from there. And then you go forward from there and you say to yourself, well, what could Miami demand from the SEC? Because they've already got a footprint in Florida. What's the SEC's furthest south footprint in Florida?
Gainesville, which is pretty close to the north end of Florida. Okay.
I was just about to say, how far is Gainesville from the south part of Florida? What you would define as South Florida? How far is it?
Well, from from if you drive from Miami, which is way in the south of Florida, drive to Miami to Gainesville, it's 5.5 hours, something like that. It's a long ways north. Yeah.
That's about an entire European country away. That's
multiple European countries.
Multiple European countries away. And Donno knows. He's been to Italy multiple times. Yeah. He's traveled.
Oh, we were in Kenton, if you drive 5 minutes in the wrong direction, you're in another country in Europe.
There you go.
I got off the wrong exit on the highway. I'm in Switzerland all of a sudden.
But you get my point here. That is a very separate market from where they already have their footprint. That's like saying, the Big Ten has their footprint in California because they have USC and UCLA. Sure, but you still have Northern California as its own market if you wanted to get into that as well. So Miami actually has the leverage to demand more, to say, hey, you have to respect us as a brand. You have to respect us as a individual and separate footprint from what you are getting in terms of getting Gainesville and whatnot. I think it's foolishness to imply that they're begging, but I get it. Donno and I have talked about this a lot with Drake Tolan. Now the other conferences getting in on it. Anything for the click. But I'll be damned if you take the click at the disrespect of an ACC school. I would defend the Dirty Foot Club the same way if I had to, because I am here for the ACC, and we're going to protect our house, which is the ACC, for as long as it stands. Now, when these teams decide to leave, if Miami decides to leave, more power to them. I wish them the best wherever they go. If Clemson decides to leave and Florida State decides, I hope the best to all of them. But while they're here, you're not going to sit here and say, Florida State begging for SEC invite. Clemson begging for Big Ten invite. Miami begging. We don't beg around here. All of our schools that are the power brokers have the right and have the ability to demand a little something.
Yeah, like I highly doubt there's like any begging going on. Like I don't think Florida State is begging any conference. I don't think Clemson or North Carolina are begging anybody. We've all been linked to these schools, I should say, have all been linked to various rumors here and there. But I mean, I will say, Kenton, and you know, Craig Freeman at Locked On Big Ten is right to bring this up, and Drake Toll talks about the Big 12 angles. They are probably right. I'll meet them in the middle in that with the long-term uncertainty around the ACC, where we're not sure what the conference is going to look like after 2031, you would say that, you know, people in leadership positions in these universities would be foolish not to send out feelers. Like they would be foolish not to, hey, like maybe I'm going to have lunch with somebody who's close with the Big Ten commissioner. We can kind of talk, hey, what's your expansion going to look like in 5 or 6 years? SEC, same thing. So listen, if you're doing your job, if you are a decision maker, administrator at any of these schools, you know, Louisville has been linked to possibly Big 12, you know, Miami, Big 10, Big 12, Florida State, Clemson. You're not doing your job if you're not at least sending out some feelers and taking the temperature of the situation, because we might be 4, 5, 6 years away from another heavy round of conference realignment. And you don't want to be the last one standing in musical chairs when that music stops. Like you want to have a good idea where you might be wanted in 5 or 6 years' time.
Donno, we're seeing something for one of the first times ever in college football. And it's been done before, but it's just very rare. When's the last time you heard of a home and home in the same year, Donno?
And never.
Okay. Well, Oregon State and Washington State are having a home and home this year. That's happening.
Right.
That's happening.
Wow.
So I understand nobody wanting to be the last person left holding the bag. Wait a minute. It's musical chairs and the music stopped and all the chairs are gone. You don't want to be that person. I get that. But the idea that they're begging is where I take exception.
Yeah.
NC State's athletic director, Boo Corrigan, had similar comments when asked, how do you feel about ACC and you know, all of the realignment and whatnot? And he said, and I'm paraphrasing here, we're keeping our options open. We're keeping our options open. We're looking. We see who's looking at us. We're looking at who's looking at us. So it's a situation where, again, I'm not mad at the potential of anybody leaving. I'm not mad at the potential that, you know, Locked On ACC may not be a thing. The ACC as a whole may not be a thing as we know it in 5 years. I do believe the ACC will persist. I just believe that it'll be in a different form than what we currently know. But I believe that when that happens, the teams that will have gone with great integrity and pride about themselves. They'll have gone with their chest up and their heads held high saying, hey, I had to do what's best for me. I had to put me first, which I don't mind. But to say that our teams are coming on their hands and knees and their lowliest dregs of rags and, oh, please, won't one of the power two come and spare us from the destitute situation we are in the Atlantic coast is blasphemy to me.
Well, we got a lot more to unpack with this. So the news story that cited this is from a website called Sports Talk Florida, which I'll admit I hadn't heard of them, or at least not a lot. It's not a place that I go to get like Miami sports news or anything like that. But they raise an interesting point about what the ACC could look like, life after Florida State and Clemson, with Miami potentially still being a part of that and all the others. So I want to get into that a little bit. Plus, when you're talking Miami to the Big Ten, there's a very obvious obstacle, a few less obvious obstacles, but also a couple reasons why that could make sense. You want to keep it locked right here. Kenton Gibbs and Alex Donno. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. Folks, Game Time is the only ticket app that Kenton Gibbs and I use because we're getting the best prices, the best features, and I love the last-minute deals. I get rewarded for procrastinating, and there are very few other aspects of my life where that is the case. We've all been there. You log on early, you wait forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. And that's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever because prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime. You could save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. Folks, the app shows you a panoramic seat view, so there are no surprises. And with Game Time, the price you see is the price you pay. No hidden fees. Take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create your account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you for making Locked On ACC your first listen. For your next listen, check out our other shows. Kenton Gibbs and Grayson Boone host Locked On Wolfpack, taking you through all things NC State. I host Locked On Canes, taking you all through things Miami Hurricanes. All right, so Kenton, like you talk about potential obstacles for Miami to join the Big Ten. I mean, maybe 5-6 years down the road, this is water under the bridge, but Miami is currently getting sued by a longstanding member of the Big Ten. Wisconsin is currently suing Miami over alleged tampering for Xavier Lucas. And the Big Ten has publicly, they're not part of the lawsuit, but they have publicly supported Wisconsin's lawsuit against Miami. I mean, listen, I guess you could say, hey, up until 5 months ago, Florida State and Clemson were suing the ACC. They're still in the ACC. So maybe in a few years, the lawsuit would be under the bridge, but it'd be a little strange, at least as for right now, to say Miami is going to join a conference whose prominent member is currently suing them.
Well, we're using the word prominent very loosely there. Unfortunately, Ron Dane ain't walking through that door. Unfortunately, Russell Wilson ain't walking through that door. Unfortunately, Barry Alvarez is no longer the long-term head coach, and we're seeing backfields of Monty Ball and James White and all that. Man, it ain't happening no more, okay? But now, Donald, I look at this a lot like I look at Texas A&M fans, Aggie fans, when Texas was considering joining the SEC. When they announced that they weren't going to re-sign with the Big 12, and Texas A&M fans were like, we're not going to let them in. We're not going to vote them in. We're not going to. And the SEC was like, yeah, okay, cool. Good for you. Yeah, we'll do a vote. You'll get your little vote. You'll do your little 1-2. say why you don't want them here. And then we're going to hear, you talking about Texas with the Lamborghini line for players walking in? Yeah, we want them. Bring them on. Bring them. You talking about Texas with the big oil money? That Texas is talking about? It's the same thing with Miami. Sure, Wisconsin may be mad about it. And listen, Madison, Wisconsin is a beautiful city. It's a beautiful place. I'd love the weather there. I'm a cold weather guy. Love Madison, Wisconsin's weather. I love Camp Randall, jump around, all that. It's great. Great college atmosphere. Great college town. They do not have the type of pull and stain to deny Miami from joining the Big Ten. It just does not exist at the moment.
Yeah, so I guess and Craig at Locked On Big Ten was saying this, from the Big Ten's point of view, and you brought this up earlier, Kenton. South Florida could be a very valuable television market to them because they don't have a presence in terms of a home team anywhere near that area. They've added Southern California recently, which was huge for them. So the Big Ten, if they were to add Miami, could truly become a coast to coast conference. I know we joke that the ACC is now that, having Cal and Stanford, but obviously USC and UCLA are bigger TV draws out west. Miami's a big TV draw down south, because at least like the SEC could say, and I know, like you mentioned, Gainesville is really far north in Florida. There are a lot of Florida alums living in South Florida, so the TV ratings are good down there, but the Big Ten doesn't have a presence down there from any of their alumni bases. And something that could be a mutual fit from both sides. Miami takes their academics very seriously, especially over the last couple of university presidents. And it's a designated research institution, which is usually a prerequisite to join the Big Ten. So it would seem academically like they would be aligned. You know me, Kenton. I think you feel the same way. I'm not a fan of the geography, like the travel miles that you rack up, because at least like in the ACC, most of the teams Miami plays against are in a somewhat geographic proximity, right? Instead of, if you're in the Big Ten, you're having to go, most of your road games are in the Midwest. Some of your road games are in California. But I guess that's no longer an obstacle, it seems, with the way these conferences are aligning themselves. So maybe that's too much of a concern on my part.
I strongly disagree. It's always going to be an obstacle. We can pretend like it's not, but it's always an obstacle. We saw Cal won how many conference games last year, Donno?
Ooh, I don't recall, actually.
It must have been about 2 or 3. Two or three, something along those lines, right?
Yeah.
Miami played them to a game that required multiple moments where it's like, hey, the entire game hinges on this moment. And a big drastic comeback to win that football game. Yeah. Objectively speaking, Miami to Cal last year, if you just look at their results of every other game and you put that into some type of computer and say, formulate what the most likely outcome of what this game is, Miami should have dominated that game. But what happened? What happened, Donno? You were up for a good chunk of that game. I'm pretty sure you went to sleep toward the end.
I had to
you stayed up the whole thing.
I had to do post game until 3 hours after the game. So you're not a happy camper.
So now, what time did that game end, Donno? In our time zone, because we're both in EST. What time did that game end?
It was probably around 1:30 in the morning Eastern, maybe 2. It was. I think I was up till 5 on post game. It was just insane for me.
So it ended at 1:30 in the morning. Those players' bodies were convinced it's 1:30 in the morning where we are, right? And they had to go over there and play a football game until then. We can pretend like it's not a problem, but it is. Cal losing all of those close one-score games all over the place, and everything seemed like, what's going on with Cal? What is up with these small, wacky little dysfunctions? They had some of the most travel in the country. Let's go outside of the ACC. West Virginia has been stuck in that mode where everybody keeps losing all these random games. This game they had locked up. What happened? That travel that we underestimate and say it's nothing. When is the last time we saw a team that's jumping from coast to coast win a national championship on the regular? I'm not saying did it once or twice. They don't. The teams that generally win national championships and go to the playoffs are teams that, for the most part, stay in their nice little bubble. They travel maybe once or twice a 2-hour jump in terms of time zone, but they're not spending the bulk of their season or half of their season darn near saying, all right, I'm going to go from California over to Syracuse, New York, and then back to California, and then to Miami, and then back. That's not what's conducive to championship. Georgia doesn't do that. Bama doesn't do it. Michigan doesn't do it. Ohio State doesn't do it. So, why are we surprised?
I mean, the team that's probably closest to finding success in that model would be Oregon. They're like this close to being a true championship winning team. So we'll see if they can pull it off.
Absolutely. But Oregon has they have a whole different level of resources than almost every other team.
That's fair.
They have their level of resources compared to everybody else.
Like they don't fly private. They actually teleport. I'm sure Phil Knight has found the technology to teleport his team.
Let me tell you something, Donno. Some teams wear Nike. They are Nike. Okay, it's a different ball game there. And even with them, they have not broken through. They've gotten there. They've knocked on the door, but even they have not broken through. So if I am talking about what is best for Miami long term, the money is a great draw. I'm not going to deny that. However, if you want to return to where Miami is back, to me, anything less than a national championship, Miami is not back, because that's the standard that Miami has set. And that's a beautiful standard. If you want to uphold that standard, do you want to take on that type of travel? It's just something to think about.
So there is, according to this article at sportstalkflorida.com, They do write something about what an ACC could look like if Miami stays in it, assuming Florida State and Clemson leave. They say behind the scenes, discussions are underway in Coral Gables, Palo Alto, Durham, Berkeley, Charlottesville, Pittsburgh, Blacksburg, Boston, Dallas, and Syracuse about a potential quote-unquote ACC 2.0, a reimagined version of the conference that could resemble a Power 4 Ivy League style alliance. I don't know if I would put that on the poster. Like if they're trying to sell that in a meeting, I don't know if whoever is championing this idea, probably the president of Stanford is like, guys, Ivy League, Power 4 alliance. That's probably not what you want to lead with. Great academics, but when you're talking about athletics, doesn't get fans that excited.
Donno, who's the last All-Pro from Yale? Actually, from the Ivy League in general, who's the last All-Pro? Help me out.
I think he fought in the First World War, whoever.
Okay. The last time I thought of a player from the Ivy League is like, oh, there's a fun story around them. Ryan Fitzpatrick and Fitzmagic. That's it. That's the last time there's been a really good story around a player from the Ivy League. I'm sorry to tell you, that is not a sell at all. You are going to actively undercut yourself with recruits and with TV markets saying, hey,
right,
Miami, Virginia Tech. No, you're watching the Power 4 version of Brown versus Columbia. Who wants that? Who asked for that?
Yeah, I don't know if I would lead with that in the meeting. So, if that's ACC 2.0, we need to come up with a new idea. But let's
2.5. We need to get to 2.5 already if that's 2.0.
Yeah, we need a couple software updates before that happens. But let's shift gears and talk quarterbacks. So there is a significant update on ACC quarterbacking, plus a now SEC quarterback was in a little hot water. We'll explain. You want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet on Locked On ACC. Thank you for making Locked On ACC your first listen. All right, so Kent, we've got one fewer quarterback competition now in the Atlantic Coast Conference. This was, I think, first reported in the media, and then Bill O'Brien confirmed it today. He spoke to the media saying that Alabama transfer quarterback Dylan Lonergan has beaten out Grayson James. He took over after the Thomas Castellanos saga last year, but Dylan Lonergan has beaten out Grayson James. For more on that before we comment on it, here is our good pal AJ Black from Locked On Boston College. Here is his reaction and takeaway on Dylan Lonergan winning that starting job.
Dylan Lonergan named starting quarterback for Boston College, according to Pete Thamel. This has been a battle for the last 2 weeks, but Dylan Lonergan finally nails it down. He will be the starter, according to the report, against Fordham in week 1. Still think we're going to see both of these quarterbacks quite a bit this season, so I don't think this will be the end for Grayson James. It's been pretty clear from practice from the last couple of weeks that Dylan Lonergan looked like the stronger quarterback. But I'm a little surprised that Bill O'Brien made the choice now. But, with only a few weeks left, you have to make a choice. It's going to be interesting to see how he continues to work with the ones and what kind of plays he can make. He's a former 4-star from Alabama. This is a big news drop for BC at practice, and we'll have full recaps of all of it here on Locked On BC and on our YouTube channel.
So make sure you're checking out AJ Black for more on that and great coverage. A few things I take away from that, and also from what Bill O'Brien said, Kenton. It sounds like it is and has been like a close enough competition that nobody seems confident enough to say that Dylan Lonergan is the guy. Everyone's saying he's going to start against Fordham, which is the season opener. So it sounds to me like Bill O'Brien's going to keep his mind open to what's happening in practice throughout the season, that Grayson James will have an opportunity. O'Brien emphasized, because I was watching his presser today, that it was a real competition. Like, he went into it with an open mind and let these guys compete. So there's that out there. And, Lonergan, obviously he's a former top 40 recruit, I believe. So this was a big time player coming out of high school. He's only played, a total of 8 snaps, little relief stints here now and then with the Crimson Tide. Doesn't have a whole lot of experience, but I guess when it comes to talent level, the cream rise to the top here. Oh, you're muted.
It absolutely happened here. And I'm looking at this situation and saying to myself, James had a great season, or not great, but I'd say he had a good season in relief of Castellanos there. Castellanos, for all the things that he could do, could not operate the offense at the same level that James did. Let's just be very honest and very frank about that. Although he's not the athlete Castellanos is, he was a much better, on time, on target, get the ball out kind of guy. Don't make magic, don't make anything special happen. And I think that may have ultimately been the Achilles heel here in terms of Lonergan winning that battle. But even beyond that, it's the battle won, not the war. If you are in the too deep for any position, too deep meaning on the depth chart, you're the second or the first, you are generally one play away from being the guy. You are one play away. Grayson James wasn't the guy coming into last year, but did he end the year as the guy? Yes. There's a young man in Norman, Oklahoma right now. Hadn't even played a snap of football yet down there. Nobody's gotten hurt yet. He thought, they brought in this great transfer quarterback, and I'm going to sit and I'm going to learn and I'm going to soak up all this information. And it appears that he may be the guy all of a sudden. Football happens that way. Not only is it the last of the gladiator sports, but guys make bad decisions. These are 18 and 22-year-olds. It's going to happen. People are going to make decisions that get them deemed ineligible or something along those lines. So if I was James, I would say just stay ready. And if I'm Lonergan, good job on winning. Stay at it. Keep at it. You could hear everybody said you will be the starter, but they didn't say he's our guy. We're rocking with him. He's our guy. He's irrevocably our guy. If he makes mistakes, we'll live with that. We'll be okay. I didn't hear that. It sounded like he's our starter for now. The way AJ Black said, we're going to see James very likely in this season again. He didn't say we're going to see him in mop-up duty maybe. He said, I know we're going to see him again. That tells me something. So I think it's a quarterback battle that is decided for who starts game one. I don't think it's a quarterback war that's ended quite yet.
So let's talk about the young man in Norman, Oklahoma. And listen, I can recall, Kenton, I did at least one Locked On Canes episode back in December, January about the possibility of, pursuing John Mateer to the Hurricanes. John Mateer, had a fantastic season last year at Washington State. He's Cam Ward's former backup at Wazoo. And so, there seemed to be a little bit of a Miami connection. If nothing else, Ward could certainly vouch for Mateer, knowing him very well. But ultimately, Mateer ended up at Oklahoma. Presumably, they're starting quarterback for the upcoming season. Seemingly, maybe an upgrade over what Jackson Arnold was there last year. But John Mateer seems to have a little bit of a judgment problem here, unless this whole thing, it was a hack, it was a Photoshop, it was a misunderstanding. So, one of the weird things, Kenton, if I'm, sending and receiving money, I usually prefer to use Zelle, Cash App, because the thing I don't like about Venmo is, why do people need to see what I'm sending and receiving money for? Like, why does this need to be like social media notifications that other people get? Like, it's a weird thing about Venmo. Now, Mateer, this is surfaced over the last couple of days. There are public Venmo receipts with the former Washington State, now Oklahoma starting quarterback, where he's sending money to some fella named Richard on Venmo with sports gambling written in the notes. Like, he took the time to type in sports gambling. In at least one case, he wrote down the specific name of the game. UCLA versus USC. Sports gambling are on John Mateer's Venmo receipts. So he's either got a sports betting problem or had a sports betting problem. And by the way, college athletes are not allowed to do that. So he's either got a gambling problem or a really poor judgment problem if he's making jokes and writing that in his Venmo notes.
I want to make one thing and one thing only clear. Now, this is all alleged, because when I saw this, I thought we were being Centel. I thought that this was like a joke, like a ha-ha, he put in sports betting. And then I start seeing more and more sources reporting this, and reputable sources. I'm like, oh, they don't play around reporting.
No.
I want to say something right now to any college athlete who comes across the sound of my voice. Okay. I'm a Detroit sports fan. You know what that means, Donno? Jamison Williams and now Malik Beasley, two of my favorite players for my teams, have gotten taken out because of some betting. Okay.
Yeah. Right.
And they're multimillionaires. Both of those guys, neither one of those guys looks at their check and is saying to themselves, how am I going to buy bread and milk? Okay. Neither one. Guys in college, whether you have NIL or not, whether you are crushing it and doing all these ads or not, whether or not teams are paying you starting quarterback money or backup long snapper money, it is not worth it to risk your eligibility and any future proceeds you could possibly get to do sports betting. I know that Donno and I read these ads for sports betting and all that, but I have told y'all multiple times, it's not something I do, and do it responsibly. And if you are able to do it within reason. This is not within reason. Throwing away Oklahoma starting quarterback salary. I don't believe there's a bet big enough to make that make sense. I really don't. Yeah. I really don't. And again, this is alleged, so I hope that he just has a really corny, cringe sense of humor. I hope that's the case. Yeah. I really do. But if he doesn't, this is the biggest form of idiocracy. And the last thing I'll say specifically to ACC teams. Coach Dave Doran taught me many things during my time at NC State. And one of the most important ones was he said, whenever we see stories of players doing domestic violence, drunk driving, anything that's very deleterious that's going to get them in a lot of trouble, we clip it and put it in our thank you pile. Do you know what that means, Donno? We look at it. Thank
you for teaching me a lesson.
Thank you for teaching me the lesson. Because as the old saying goes, it takes a fool to learn from his own mistakes. The wise man learns from the mistakes of others. You have got to look at this, ACC players, and be the wise man. Say to yourself, I'm good. I actually don't need to put that same game parlay down. I don't need it.
Yeah. So maybe the last we saw, I know that there was there was a quote from someone within Oklahoma's administration saying that Mateer has denied any sports gambling, and I think Oklahoma was going to release a more official statement later on today on Tuesday. So he's definitely going to go with a denial, which whether you did it or not, denying it is probably the right move. If you did do it, you don't want to come out and admit it. So maybe he is innocent. I just wonder if there is an investigation, Kenton, how deep can and will they go? Because it seems like if he was betting on sports while he was at Washington State, he's obviously sending Venmo to somebody else to place wagers on his behalf. So like he doesn't have an account at the sites, it doesn't seem, which would be incredibly stupid. So, is there evidence of that person then Venmoing him back winnings if he wins bets? Are they able to trace the accounts of this person that he's allegedly making bets through? Like, I wonder how deep they can and are willing to go in terms of investigating this. I think that's the next thing we'll find out.
That's a great question, and it's a question that I hope dies out very quickly. I hope it's a question that we look at and the answer ends up being, everything blew over and it wasn't a big deal, and he is just a little that air up in Pullman had him a little loopy, and he put in some bad names in the Venmo request. Because again, if what is being alleged of him is true, it brings me back to my belief that intelligence doesn't exist as we understand it. People just have competencies for different areas, because the competency required to run Dickert's offense at Wazoo, the competency required to run that at a high level, that's something that's like a 5% of players ever could do. But then the incompetency to not know the rules and say, hey, maybe if I am going to do this illegal thing, maybe if I got the itch that I got to scratch, don't scratch it publicly in front of people where they can say, hey, he's scratching the itch that's illegal to scratch.
Yep. Yeah, so we'll leave it at that. Make sure you check out Kenton at Locked On Wolfpack and at TGIF_Kenton on X. Check me out at Locked On Canes and at Alex Donno on X. We'll talk to you guys again next time on another episode of Locked On ACC. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.